Welcome back to Urban Legends Across the U.S., a series where we visit every state in the U.S. at random to find out their local lore and urban legends. Today we travel to Oregon. Upon research, I found there are 3 very unique things about Oregon. 1, it's the only state flag to carry 2 separate designs. 2, it is considered by many to be the best place in the world for windsurfing. And 3, it has more ghost towns than any other state. But I guess you'll be the judges of that. Enjoy. The Haunting of Lafayette Cemetery. Stories here are centered around 2 women from the area, Anna Marple and Lena Elsie Imus. Anna Marple's son Richard was hung on November 11, 1887, for the murder and subsequent dismemberment of David Corker, a local businessman. Many believed that Anna was his accomplice, and although she was sentenced to be hanged for her crimes as well, she was also accused of being a witch. Before she died, she cursed the town, saying that it would burn to the ground 3 times. Since her death, the town has burnt twice. Her ghost continues to haunt the cemetery, and ghost hunters have caught her voice on tape, shouting for them to go home. The other spirit, Lena, is buried in the cemetery, but haunts the Argyle Winery. Lena took her own life in 1908 in her home, which is now the site of the winery. She is often seen by employees, hearing footsteps and smelling perfume when no one is there, additionally hearing glasses breaking when there is no broken glass to be found. People do not fear Lena, though, and in fact, in her honor, have named several wines after her. Heceta Head House's Grey Lady. Heceta Head House is the lightkeeper's house for the Heceta Head Lighthouse. Say that fast 3 times. The home was turned into a bed and breakfast in the 1950s. Nearly every guest who has stayed there has reported some form of paranormal activity, including items moving in their rooms and disembodied screams. Most activity is attributed to Rue, also known as the Grey Lady, who lived in the house around the turn of the century. Rue doesn't seem to like it when construction is done or changes are made to the buildings. Reportedly, some volunteer workers had gone up to the location to do some painting and were spending the night. Through the night, the fire alarm kept going off, even though there was no fire discovered, and the alarm continued to go off. After growing tired of being woken up by the sound of the alarm, they removed the battery, but to no avail. The alarm sounded yet again. One workman came face to face with Rue in the attic. He was so startled that he fled the building and refused to go back into the attic. A few days later, he accidentally broke the attic window when he was working on the exterior of the building. And since he refused to actually go inside the attic, he repaired the window from the outside, and the broken glass was left scattered on the floor of the attic. That night, workers reported hearing scraping noises coming from the attic. In the morning, when they went to the attic to investigate, they found that the glass had been swept into a neat pile beneath the repaired window. Rue has other ways of making her presence known, including moving random objects, opening and closing cupboard doors, peering down at people from the attic window, and appearing as a smoky gray mist, thus the nickname, Grey Lady. The Witches of Malheur, Butte. It is said that the dead volcano, Malheur Butte, overlooking Ontario, Oregon, on the border of Oregon and Idaho, is home of many secret witches' ceremonies. The witches draw from the power of the Snake River, one of the only 2 rivers in the U.S. that run south to north. People have also reported being chased by dark, shadowy imps the size of dogs, except with long, skinny limbs, oversized heads, and no eyes. Many of these stories account for the loud, bone-chilling noises the creatures make. Hot Lake Hotel Haunting. Located in Union City, the Hot Lake Hotel is regarded as one of the most haunted places in the state. The hotel went from rather unknown to a lavish space costing $500,000 to construct, with its completion coming in 1908. That's a steep price for those times. In 1917, Dr. Fye purchased the property, converting the 3rd floor of the building into a hospital, complete with spaces for operations and rooms to house patients. Following World War II, the space was converted again into a nursing home and asylum. This lasted until around 1975. The space was used several more times for different operations until 1991, where it fell into such far stages of disrepair that it was left abandoned. Naturally, the hotel is now incredibly haunted. Reports say that ghosts of former hotel guests have been spotted on the property, disembodied voices and whispers, footsteps, the whole thing that makes a place haunted. Hot Lake Hotel was the first commercial building in the world to utilize geothermal energy and is currently a bed and breakfast, museum, and spa. It entered the National Register of Historic Places in 1979, and it was the centerpiece of a 2001 episode of the Scariest Places in the World. McMinnville UFO sightings. In 1950, farmer Paul Trent took 2 photos of a large metallic-looking disc that his wife Evelyn saw hovering in the sky over their farm. Evelyn started yelling for her husband at 7:45 that evening. She was feeding their rabbits in the yard of the couple's Dayton farm when she saw it. Like a good-sized parachute canopy without the strings, only silver bright mixed with bronze. It was as pretty as anything I ever saw, she said. She ran into the house, found her husband and their camera, and they raced back into the yard. Paul spotted it too, a round, shiny, wingless object hovering in the sky. The 43-year-old farmer managed to take 2 photographs before the flying object disappeared into the evening mist. These photographs were published in several magazines, including Life magazine, and they are one of the most credible sightings of a UFO ever captured. Paul Trent died in 1998, a year after his wife. He eventually just wanted to put the whole UFO thing behind him. When 2 reporters asked for recollections some 40 years after the sighting, he chaffed at Evelyn's willingness to talk again about what they had seen. "I told you to forget about all that," he said. Evelyn just nodded at her husband, and then continued her story. Portland, Oregon's Shanghai tunnels. Under the city of Portland, there are a series of tunnels connecting hotels and bars to the waterfront. Originally, they were built to move supplies from boats to their basement storage units. But these tunnels were also used for illegal activities from 1850 to 1941. Things like underground brothels, opium dens, gambling houses, but most horrifically, used for human trafficking. This resulted in the death of many people. and you can still hear the deceased talking, moaning, and screaming. Oregon State Hospital, Salem, Oregon. Built in the 1800s, the hospital was an insane asylum where patients were routinely mistreated and abused. Experiments were rumored to have taken place on their helpless patients in the hospital's underground tunnels. Nearly 80 years ago now, on November 18th, 1942, a terrifying scene unfolded at the Oregon State Hospital. What began like any other day ended in tragedy and confusion. After being served an enticing breakfast of scrambled eggs, patients began to die left and right. They presented with illness by vomiting blood and writhing on the floor in agony. Some patients died in minutes, while others succumbed to this mysterious terror hours later. The death toll ended at 47 lives. The official report said that 263 patients fell ill, but the newspapers that ran the story reported that over 400 patients had contracted this unknown illness. An investigation was immediately launched, and officials from the Army, American Medical Association, and the Food and Drug Administration were quickly dispatched to the state hospital campus in Salem. Considering the patient occupancy of the hospital was estimated to have been around 2,700 at the time. One of the doctors to first respond was Dr. William Lidbeck, a pathologist who lived in one of the colleges on the site. What he found was a horror show. Patients were experiencing abdominal cramping and severe nausea, which turned into them vomiting blood, having seizures, struggling to breathe, and even some experiencing paralysis. Lidbeck had deduced that they had ingested a virulent poison and believed those who died the quickest had eaten the most of the poisoned eggs, whereas others who would have their death prolonged for hours. The night ended with a full morgue, chapel, and a hallway lined with bodies. The investigation into the incident was of the utmost importance and was conducted swiftly. Autopsies were done on 6 patients, and samples of the poisoned eggs were taken from their stomach contents, as well as the patients' plates. These samples were fed to rats who succumbed within minutes, and within 22 hours, the poison was identified as sodium fluoride, but it was only found in the eggs cooked at the Oregon State Hospital. Commonly used as an insecticide for rats and cockroaches, it was a white substance that acts quickly, but could be easily mistaken for flour, baking powder, or powdered milk. According to the reports, the hospital's assistant cook confessed that he told officials he had sent a patient to the basement storeroom for powdered milk, and the patient mistakenly brought back roach poison, and it had been mixed in with the scrambled eggs. Patients in asylums were regularly used to help in the kitchen and around the hospital as part of a work experience opportunity to help them with self-esteem, feeling productive, as well as earning a small wage. Procedures now have changed so vastly that an incident like the one that occurred at the Oregon State Hospital would never happen again. What now remains within the walls of the Oregon State Hospital, including the intimidating and creepy underground tunnels, has created an environment where those who have investigated have felt an overwhelming sense of evil. The brave souls who willingly explore the tunnels and other areas of this haunted asylum are undeterred by the stories about patients allegedly being transported in the tunnels below the facility, or the evidence that suggests they were used for immoral, unethical, and barbaric medical experiments. This all took place so deep underground that their screams could not be heard. Phantom footsteps, doors opening and closing on their own, screams and cries from former patients can all be experienced at the Oregon State Hospital. A lot of the unrest found there might also be attributed to the controversy of the hospital staff having lost over 1,500 cans of patients' cremated remains. the Bandage Man. This Cannon Beach area urban legend tells the story of a ghostly man walking around covered in bloody bandages head to toe. This urban legend began in the 1960s, and it goes like this. A young couple was parked in a truck somewhere near Cannon Beach, oblivious to their surroundings, making out when the truck shifted as though someone had climbed into the truck bed. They looked out the rear window to find a disfigured man covered in bandages, rocking the truck back and forth. He started pounding on the window and on the top of the truck. It was at this point the boy pulled the truck out of the overlook and started racing down the highway. The couple drove for a few miles with the bandaged man still beating on the truck until he finally disappeared. Over time, many drivers have reported seeing a man covered in bandages jumping into their cars. Couples in parking lots or overlooks reported seeing the bandaged man approaching their car. Others say that they've seen him on the beach and walking down the side of either Highway 101 or a short road known locally as Bandage Man Road, which connects to Cannon Beach. Some believe that the Bandage Man is the ghost of a logger who died after horrific injuries sustained while working nearby. It is said when he's near you, you become overwhelmed with the scent of rotten flesh, and that he often leaves behind a bloody bandage. Dun dun dun. There's also supposedly a lady of Cannon Beach, and that story goes like this. Around 11 p.m. on a warm night in September, a landscaper was walking to her home on Adams. She was on Spruce by Harrison Street when she noticed a glowing white figure. The white figure appeared to be in a white dress and was gliding, not walking. She said the woman or apparition had no face, or at least a dark hole in place of her face. Anna McMenamins of Grand Lodge. McMenamins is the pride of Oregon. The company converts historic buildings into hotels, restaurants, and other establishments, ghosts and all. At the Grand Lodge in Forest Grove, staff and guests have reported a ghost of a woman with white hair, slippers, and a patterned dress walking down the hallways of the hotel. They're even more surprised to see a painting of this woman hanging in the hotel. It is believed to be the ghost of Anna, a woman who lived in the hotel for many years and passed just before turning 100 years old. The Jantzen Beach carousel. From the 1920s until the 1970s, Jantzen Beach Amusement Park on Hayden Island was a widely popular tourist attraction. At the height of its heyday, the amusement park was drawing in some 725,000 visitors a year. The Vanport flood of 1948 would signal the changing of an era. A litany of issues, including fires and several deaths, led to the park's demise. Although the Jantzen Beach Amusement Park survived the massive flood that destroyed an entire nearby city, many people began moving out of the area, resulting in a loss of ticket sales. Tolls collected on the interstate bridge construction during the 1950s weren't exactly helpful either. Commercial value of the acreage was steadily increasing as attendance slumped and the park was officially closed on Labor Day of 1970, to be replaced with the current Jantzen Beach Mall that remains today. This space, which was now used for a mall, actually featured the park's original carousel. But in 2012, when the mall underwent renovations, the old carousel was put in storage. The odd thing is, in 2015, when the city officials went to retrieve the old carousel to put it back in the mall, it was gone. There are varying reports about the whereabouts of this mysterious carousel, but either way, there's certainly some spooky, strange things happening here. In case the images weren't clear, I think it will be quite difficult to move or hide an enormous carousel My guess, it probably was sold off in pieces on eBay long ago. I'm not sure if this qualifies as spooky, but I can almost hear the screams of excitement as thrill seekers scream on the roller coaster that no longer exists. If you have a story you'd like to see featured here, email me at duchessdark676@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.